Hey Stoners, welcome to this edition of Sticks-n-Stonez Short Takes. Today's take is a primer on American whiskey. American whiskey was born as a rye product about 1791 in what is now known as Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia area. By 1799, it is believed that George Washington, yes, the one from the $1 bill, was the largest distiller in the fledgling United States. It's amazing. We got our start brewing whiskey. There are 6 types of American whiskey. Rye, that must have a 51% rye content in its mash bill. Malted rye, which must have 51% malted rye, and you may remember malting from the Scotch primer. That's where the grain is dried after it comes out of the germination process, soaking in water. Scotch is made with barley that has been malted over a peat-fueled fire or a fire of some sort, and the same holds true for rye or malt whiskey, which is actually got a mash bill of 51% barley, but you can't call it Scotch if you remember the Scotch primer. Then there is wheat whiskey, which has a 51% wheat content in the mash bill. And you know that Maker's Mark is one that has a fairly high wheat content, but it is still not a wheat whiskey. Bourbon is 51% corn, and then corn whiskey is also 51% corn. It is after the distillation process where corn whiskey and bourbon whiskey part ways. We'll get more into that in just a second. By law, to be called one of these kinds of whiskeys, it must be distilled at no greater than 160 proof and have no flavors, colors, or additives blended in with it. Flavored whiskey is technically not whiskey. If you notice, a lot of flavored whiskeys, quote unquote, will have liqueur or something like that in their title. It's because technically they're not a whiskey. All but corn whiskey must be aged in new charred oak barrels. This is where bourbon and corn whiskey part ways. And the aging process in the charred oak barrels is also what gives bourbon its color. Why regular corn whiskey is clear like a vodka. The aging process gets that nice golden color as the char and the wood is absorbed out of the barrel into the liquor. Now, straight whiskey is not more than 160 proof. It must be aged 2 years, and it cannot be blended with any colors, additives, flavors, etc. Now, light whiskey, and this seems like a misnomer, is distilled at greater than 160 proof. Wow. That's got to be some pretty tough stuff. I can honestly say I have never tried a light whiskey, but I might have to put that on my list. Tennessee whiskey, by law, must be straight whiskey that is distilled within the state of Tennessee. Thank you, Jack Daniels. Spirit whiskey is a neutral spirit that's blended with at least 5% whiskey. Then you have a plethora of brands that all have their own distinctions that they like to character. The aforementioned aging process and spending a particular amount of time in new charred oak barrels, there is no minimum requirement, but that's where brands will make themselves different. There and also in the content of the other 49% of grains in the blend. As you recall, Maker's Mark that like to use wheat, a red wheat in their whiskey. As I said, there are a plethora of brands, both large and small, in the whiskey landscape, and you should really get out and try as many of them as you can. There's a lot of ones that you may never have heard of, that you may walk right past, that are actually very good whiskeys. Texas Silver Star is one of the lesser known whiskeys, and it is distilled here in the DFW area, and it's one of my favorite whiskeys, and there's some very great people. So when you go into your liquor store, wander down the whiskey aisle, don't just always reach out and grab the old standby, the number 7 or the Jim Beam or Knob or Buffalo Trace, 1792, any of the long list of very well-known whiskeys. But make sure that you look for some of those lesser knowns. Do a little search on the internet. And you don't have to commit to a full fifth on a lot of these. You can go into the mini bottle aisle, the pints aisle, and at least sample what's out there. Buy several. You don't have to have a bender to sample several whiskeys and really figure out some of the good ones that you might not have heard of. The key is don't be afraid to try something new. I hope you've enjoyed this short take, this little primer on American whiskey. I hope you've gotten something out of it. Please remember to hit like, subscribe, and share. Ring the little notification bell so that you know when my videos drop. You can find me on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and now Instagram. So you can find me at pretty much any of the social media sites. Till next time, keep your sticks dry, your stones cold. Have a great day.